Perfect. So we're going to talk about fostering entrepreneurial spirit, and let's kind of break that down first, right? Because I think sometimes you tell people, I want you to foster entrepreneurial spirit in your organization. People are like, no, don't do that. Everybody's going to leave and start their own company. That's not what I mean. And guys, just because somebody can start their own business does not mean they're going to start their own business. If you love on your people the right way, if you develop them the right way, and remember, if they see the future is achieved best by being where they are right now, they're not going to start an entrepreneurial business. They're not going to go for business for themselves. But what it means when you have an entrepreneurial spirit in your team members, that means that they care about this company as if it was their own. They would treat it the same way, right? I talked a lot about this when I managed, gyms, and I was a GM at a gym, and we had to clean a lot, right? And I wanted to send this message to my people, but also more importantly, wanted to build it in my people that the cleanliness of the club, they cared about the same way as they do their house. The same way you wouldn't bring people into your dirty house and show it that way. I wanted them to care the same way about the building. And it all came to create an entrepreneurial spirit within them. Uh, so that comes from leadership development. And that's not just from developing them as leaders. It comes from your own leadership development, being able to develop yourself and know how to inspire people the right way. It comes from task to strength synergy, right? If mentioned on the last slide, we had a person that had low potential and also low performance, below average. So we kept trying to push it. That person will never have entrepreneurial spirit. Just not, because they're not going to feel good within their place of employment. And in order for you to care about some place, you need to feel good in that place. You need to care about protecting the prosperity of that place, right? If I really love my job, I never want something to happen to that job, because then I'm going to have to find another place that's like that. If I really love my team members that I work with, I don't want anything to happen to that environment, because I really enjoyed the team's interactions that I have with those people, right? And then in order to do this, this is where you guys see 5 levels of leadership from John Maxwell. And we're going to do an exercise right now where I'm going to show you guys how I've built leadership development programs for my previous teams. There's a lot of what I see, and guys, tell me if you've seen this. I want to see what the group says. Do you see leadership development start and stop all the time? This, to me, in my experience, it's one of the most common programs that starts, goes for a few months, and then dies off. Starts, goes for a few months, and dies off. People understand that there is importance to leadership development, but they don't have accurate systems into how to do that. Hold on one sec. Nope, there's not a way for me to see it. But so what they're doing is they're basically what I normally see happen. A manager goes, all right, I got to develop for the future. I got to develop my leaders. It's the thing I got to do. They put way too much on their shoulders. They don't think about the future of this program and how to build it sustainably to where it doesn't require a whole lot of their time. There's a way to do that. And what ends up happening, they put a bunch of time, bunch of effort. They go for 2 months, 3 months, whatever it may be. And eventually the other things that were important fall to the side. So now they got to go play catch up there, and the leadership programs falls aside. My leadership development was the most important meeting in my calendar. It trumped anything. It trumped my meetings with my senior management. It trumped my meetings with my lower management, whatever it was. It was the most important meeting in 6 years that I ran leadership development. So you got to figure what, over 300 meetings that's happened weekly. I missed a total of 6, one a year on average. And then there's 2 in 1 year, one another year, and there's trips and different things coming up. But it's that important. It's something that never went away. And you're going to see how doing that created the success on my teams that fixed turnover and did all those things by just having the system. And Kevin knows I'm a fan of systems. He'll make fun of me sometimes. I'm too much of a fan of a system sometimes. I'm always trying to get everything to a system. But I think that, yeah.
No problem with systems, Anton.
But sometimes you got to remember the human beings push buttons too. But the point of a system, right, is I'm going to challenge you as leaders and your HR managers and all these people to have a systemic approach to leadership development. So what you see here is 5 levels of leadership by John Maxwell. This man is brilliant. I've learned a ton from him, but I ran my entire leadership development program off this pyramid. That's what it was. And that was the basis of it. And I understood that first, a leader needs to understand positioning, right? People follow me because they have to. So in this area, the kind of development that went in here was job requirements, technical skills, right? The basic stuff. So what happened is we took a group of people, and I had a team of, I think the first time I started was a team about 30. And I asked them, who wants to move up? Nobody raised their hand. All right. So what we had to do is we had to start in personal development first. I started to create a personal development group. And in there, I started to inspire them to become leaders, because I told you when I took over, there was not one person in the market that wanted to move up because leadership positions look so bad. And that was my biggest thing. So by enticing them with personal development, I got them to want more. And then they went into desiring leadership. If you already have people desiring the position, you may not have to do that step in that moment. It may come in later. So I identified a group of people, and I think it was about 6 to 8 team members out of that group that wanted to do that. And I said, this is a commitment. This is not something that you're going to come and go to. This meeting becomes now a mandatory meeting. We reevaluate in 4 weeks. If this is not for you, great. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to make it a little bit rigid, because sometimes people kind of, they come in, they poke their head, and the minute they hit some resistance, the minute they get uncomfortable, they back off. There should be there. They just need to learn how to work past resistance. So for that reason, I asked them to commit to at least 4 blocks at a time, four development sessions at a time, and then I reevaluate at the end of the month. So we started with basics, right? They got into, I wanted to know how they could pull a report. When they got to the leadership position that they were in, do you know how to push a button to find the report that you need to find? Basic things. Do you know how to create a report, deliver it to the team? Do you know how to help team members with looking up and clocking in their hours? Just the little administrative technical things that are part of a leadership position, part of management position that we understand. But they're very basic. They don't require a lot. And then we move it into permission, right? Now your people want to work for you. So now we started to have them take people under their wing. This phase is when they started to become mentors, and they started to work on not necessarily your high level potential people, but people that are just kind of newer. They need somebody, but there's somebody taking care of them right now. And we started to develop meetings and how to do that better. How can they be viewed as a people's champion? How can they be viewed as a person that's servant leader, as Kevin would say? How can they be the person that people come to with problems? How do they become that individual? So that was level 2. Then comes in production. And this is where we focused on their individual performance. There's different types of leadership. I come from a leadership that if you're still in an executor role, you need to be one of the best performers with the time that you have. Right. But not all leaders are in an executor role. So that just kind of depends. And what I mean by that is if you still execute the function that your front line does, like in sales as an example, right? So if I always still did, I enjoy sales. So I never gave it up. Even as a senior manager and, when I was running the market, I still did individual sales because it's something that I enjoyed, but also I could show my team what was possible. A lot of times we get people that go, oh, you haven't been in it for so long, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, if I can just show you right now, here's my own individual performance. I'm not just talking the talk, I'm walking the walk. And I wanted all of my leaders to be that way. I never wanted any of my leader to be the kind of person that just says, you go do this, while they wouldn't do it. But also the dirty stuff, right? Getting your hands dirty is another thing that I taught them. I taught them everybody hates cleaning, but you better be the first person there, right? You better be the first person doing it before your team, so they don't see that you're putting them below you. So that's where really production comes in, is so that there is no such thing as, preferential treatment for ourselves, or on the other hand of asking for performance that we can't deliver ourselves. That's a big one that I see a lot of leaders do, unfortunately. And then comes in level 4, which is people development. Now they're going in, and instead of just having somebody under their wing where it was just general mentoring, now we're moving into teaching them one-on-ones. Now we're teaching them how to be coaches. Now we're instilling those point A to point B skills on how they can empower people to come up with their own answers, their own solutions, and own their solutions to get to the root cause of the problem and correct it. So now it becomes more formalized. They have their one-on-one meetings set up formally. They're recording their one-on-ones meetings. They're actionable items right right in the meeting that we're following up the following meeting, seeing how it went, how it changed. And I am and helping them as well as they're helping each other on how to adjust and how to shift that. And then ultimately they're getting to that pinnacle of, they're respected, they're high performance, they're, they're just that leader. And ultimately I would never get anybody there because I'm not there. I don't think I'm a level 5 leader yet. I strive to hopefully get there. Kevin and V will hopefully help me. But at the same time, like, I don't think anybody's ever got there. That's something that we're always striving for. It's something that we're always getting for. I think the point of being a level 5 leader is you'll never say you're a level 5 leader. So that's that pinnacle, right? So what does this ultimately look like in action? The program went like this, and this is what I want your participation on right now. I want you guys to chime in and let's run through this exercise. So what we did is first we did the book, 5 Levels of Leadership, just to understand high level what each one of them was. But this is how I wanted to start to create the right motivation for people. I wanted to make sure that it's not just delivering their leadership development, is that they were part of it. They felt autonomous during it. They felt important, impactful, all those important things. So I gave them the power to choose the direction kind of that we were going in. So this was the outline, the 5 levels of the outline. And we did a 6-month program where for each level, there was 2 books that we covered and they picked the books. So as an example, when it comes down to position, we talked about management skills. That's what that was. So I want to ask you guys, do you know any books that would be ideal for a new manager to understand the technical aspects of management and their position? What would be some of those examples that you've read that would be relevant for that area?
In some parts, creative followership.
Tell me why. Tell me why, Kev.
Well, because he addresses in the book elements of how to be about the function that you need to be and how you need to fill the role and the communication involved, some of the basic components of functioning as a manager.
Love it. That's perfect. That's a great example of the actual duties and functions that you got to do in understanding those. What would be another example? Anybody got another example?
So the book that comes to mind, I've read it a long time ago, so I can't remember all the details, but it was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And because there it also gives you some perspective on what you do and the impact you can have on your teams or your team members. So I think that would be also a good one.
Covey's so good. I mean, I think in different times, I've obviously ran through this program many times, and I don't think there's ever been a time where at least one of Covey's books wasn't in it. It's just there's Speed of Trust that fits in there. There's a bunch of different ones that he has, and he's a great writer. Yep. Any others come to mind from the audience?
We have Kimberly who mentions, I think it's Everybody Communicates, Few Connect.
Great. Another good book. Not familiar with that one. I'll have to check it out. But yeah, another great one. So what would happen is every team member that's on this, development team that we have would bring their version of whatever they want to read, and then they would pitch it to the group of why that is. Just like they just explain it and they say why it's a good fit, what we get from it. So not am I just getting the book and not am I just getting them to pick it, I'm also giving these leaders opportunity early on to start presenting and start to practice the skill of persuasion that is so important to leaders, right? You guys are going to see this thing is very layered and it's very intentional because it needs to be that way. The other thing is here, look at the depth that we've spent here. We took 2 books just to cover this area, a full month, sometimes longer, depends on how it went, to really deep dive into it. It shouldn't be rushed. Why? Because this development is proactive. This is happening a year before I need them to be in the leadership position that they need to be. I got 2 weeks to get them up to speed to fill my pipeline that I didn't have built. This is why it has to be so proactive. If you do it right, by the time these people are ready to be promoted, they don't just know your job. They're already interested in your boss's job because they know your job so well, right? And they're motivated, they're hungry, they want to showcase their skills instead of being uncomfortable and going, I don't know how to execute the basic duties. How am I going to be a leader if I don't know how to push buttons with my job? And you'd be surprised how many managers come in and they're spending so much time learning technical things as a manager instead of focusing on building their relationship with their team and growing the culture. Right. So that should be the very table stake thing that you establish for them: reports, basic functions, things like that. Now let's dive into permission. So what would be some books that would be good for they want to follow me as a leader? What teaches people to be the kind of leader that is liked and like, maybe not a word how you interpret it, but respected, and they want to be working for them?
I
So
would
go on, Kevin.
Blue Collar Leadership by Max Story.
Why is that, Kev?
Because he talks about going, in that leadership role. It goes beyond just what you have to do as a leader, but how what you do affects other people, and taking into account what you do relative to other people.
Love it. What others? Any others?
The one I'm thinking is from Simon Sinek, start with why. Usually people, when you explain them the why they need to do certain things, then they will follow it. They want to be part of it.
People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, as he said so well. Absolutely. And knowing that and connecting into the purpose is very motivating for people. Any others from the audience?
Kimberly mentions developing the leader within you 2.0.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Right? When you are a good self leader, you're naturally typically going to be good external leader. People that are good self leaders don't end up being external leaders. And when you're leading yourself and you're setting the example, you become the pinnacle that people want to, kind of get up to, and they just naturally follow you. It's human nature. It's just how it happens. Absolutely. The two for me, guys, speed of trust, I already mentioned it. That's the one that usually goes into. And in order for people to want to follow you, they need to feel trust from you. They need to feel empowerment from you. They need to feel that you have their best self-interest in mind. Otherwise, everything is taken through a lens, and that lens is usually not the right lens. It's an us versus them mindset lens, and that's not a good one. The other one that comes to mind, or it does it two that come to mind, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge by Andy Stanley, great author. And that one resonates a lot. And I try to teach that one a lot because it's a very common thing, because this program is designed for your new leaders, right? They haven't really been managers yet. They're just moving into it. Could you use it in other ways? Absolutely. But that's how I used it. A common thing that happens to managers, we've heard the words power trip, right? Where people get a little bit of seniority and now they're bossing everybody around, especially if they came up front of their peers. Now they feel more, superior to them. And I say, could you lead the same way without a title? If you didn't have that title, would you say the same things? Would you do it that way? And if not, don't do it with a title. When I was in the military, guys, I'll tell you, I used to get in trouble a lot because I made it through the ranks really fast. I achieved the rank of sergeant in 2 years and 3 months, which is like astronomical, especially in my MOS. And all my peers had to call me by the rank because that was, the proper thing to do. And I didn't like it. So my seniority would always yell at me, and I would come back to him and say, why does this matter? Why does this thing matter? Should you not care about what I get them to do, how fast I get them to do, how safe I get them to do it? Why does it matter what they're calling me? And I'm not going to get into whether it's right or wrong what I said, but I always had this idea. I don't want people to follow me because I have an extra chevron than them on my collar. I don't want people to follow me because I have a senior title compared to them. I want people to follow them because they see that what I'm asking them to do or I'm engaging them to do is the best thing for them. That's ultimately about. When we take that approach, that's kind of how it happens. And another good book for there, it's a classic. I'm surprised nobody said that. How to Win Friends and Not Alienate People. How to win friends and influence people. How to win friends and influence friends. Who wrote that one? God, it's like from the 30s.
Carnegie.
Yeah, that's like from the 30s, but still so relevant. It's how to be a kind of person that's liked. Teach people how to show interest in other people. I'll admit this to a weakness. I am so cerebral at times and so high level in my own head that I miss those small things in conversations that solidify relationships, show deeper levels of care. So that's where we taught people how to be more interested in people. That's a great book that teaches you how to take interest in people. When you take interest in people, they want to follow you. right? So the next level, production. What kind of books come to mind when you think of individual production, right? Setting those high sights and really going for high numbers.
I have to refer back to one that I mentioned initially. Another element of it is creative followership. He talks about in there, and it's kind of interesting. The author of it was the president of Chick-fil-A, and nobody knows his name, but they see the results of what he did, and his ability to look at production and how to model the behaviors that made production happen, and he did it without being in the limelight.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Any others? This one's a little tougher because there's not a lot of books focused on production, because that's something that is not a common thing that people drive. But I told you, I'm a little different. I think that leaders, if they're still in execution roles, they need to show high level production within the time that they have. It may not be the same. I want to drive this home too, because right, if I'm only spending 2 hours of my day in that executor role compared to a team member spending 10 hours in that role, I'm not expecting myself to perform higher than them, but I better get more out of my 2, or at least as good as their 2. Otherwise, I'm not setting a good example. But Drive for Me is a good book because it teaches us how to find intrinsic motivation to push through difficult times. Grit falls into that line too. All those books that teach us that, you know, we can persevere, we can do better. Those are great examples. And then getting into reproduction, right? Now we're getting more into the one-on-one stuff, more into development of others. What other books come to mind here?
Sorry, Anton, before we move on, just 2 comments. One from Josune, sorry if I mispronounce your name. She wrote earlier, I think holacratic organizational models based in collective knowledge and diverse genialities are the most effective general betterment strategy. And Kimberly now is mentioning a few that I know in mind, but she's not sure which of the top 3 tiers. So the books are The Infinite Game, Sacred Pace, and FOR, F-O-R.
Infinite Game is a good one for production. I actually haven't read it, to be honest with you, but I understand the concept because I've used the concept of infinite goals well before Simon came around, because it's well before Simon. But it's funny because like Simon Sinek comes out with somebody who was like, oh my God, what a monumental concept. I'm like, it's not. It exists well before him. He's just a really good marketer. But anyway, yeah, Infinite Game, right? With production, it's a good one because a lot of times we have finite goals in production. And performance ends up dropping with finite goals. One of my gifts for you guys, I'm going to send you guys, and each one of these, Kevin and V will send you guys a gift as well, either a PDF for some version of that at the end of the conference, will be how to set goals in a way that continues to drive performance. But in order for that to exist, you have to learn what infinite goals are, because what happens with finite goals that have an end, usually when you get close to that end, the performance really drops because the work required to get the last little bit is so much more than the first little bit. And remember, I talked about motivation, that we assess the work needed. If the work needed is lower than the reward received, we're not going to be motivated to do that. But if the work needed is less than the reward received, we're going to be motivated to do that. So that infinite goal, we keep reaching, because there, as long as I put in the work, I can improve. So as an example, is be not looking at get $10,000 in sales. And once again, my sales example, sorry, but be top 1% in the company, right? It's a moving target. Everybody gets better. So this person has to continue to get better to stay in the top 1%. That's a really bad example because it's really just revenue focused, but you can do that with individual goals and individual performance. So yeah, that Infinite Game is a really good one.
So another book I'd like to mention for the 4, and not because it's people development, but more because of what you have done for them. And just 5 minutes. It's a book called Lead Like an Ally from Julie Kratz. And it's more aimed at diversity, but it really shows what you can do for your team, your organization, to be more inclusive, Again, it talks about how to recruit and lead and manage things and onboard people, etc., etc. So I think it would be probably a good book that would fit in that category.
Love it, love it. And obviously this book itself, 5 Levels of Leadership, is what I would read for the pinnacle, right? It really teaches us how to get there, but there's many others. For time, we've got to keep moving. So mentoring, right? Fostering entrepreneurial spirit. I already mentioned this. You're going to see a lot of the things that I talked about are going to be layered in the future conversation, because there's a system that's built. Now we just use that built system to impact different areas, right? So mentoring, peer development, getting into these people are now going to become peer developers of the rest of my team. As I'm teaching them different things, instead of me doing something with 6 people, I do it once with 6 people. And now those 6 people are going to become me with others. And it's just extension of myself, because I've done a good job with mentoring them and going through this program. But here's the thing about peer development. Us versus them mindset exists in most organizations. So when you start to put out development, or you start to try to teach somebody, sometimes and oftentimes it's going to be received in, you're doing this because it benefits you. You're doing this because you want to grow company revenue or whatever. But if a peer comes in and says, hey, let me help you out with something, I'm going to teach you this because it's a strength of mine, it's received so much better. It's received with so much more desire to implement the training and development that happens there. So peer development needs to be part of your system. Whether you implement my leadership development program or not, using peer development somehow, some way is going to help you tremendously, because it develops the peers, but it also saves time. One of my focus on human sustainability is on the leader themselves. There's only 40 hours in a week, and I hope that you're not working more than that, because then you're not giving a good example to your people. So you have to be very, very good with the time that you have to give to development. So if I can develop future developers, I'm replicating, I'm making myself a lot more available. So get your rock stars engaged. This is where I want to mention 2 things to you guys. And I think this comes from a book. I'm trying to remember. I want to say it comes from the book, not Conversation. I don't know. It's something about being honest. But anyway, so there's 2 types of people. You have your rock stars and you have your superstars. And we're going to go a little bit over on this time, V. Just we'll cut it back on the next one. There's rock stars and there's superstars. Your superstars is what most people tend to focus on. These are your people. And I was a superstar in companies. I'm the kind of person that will do a lot of above and beyond work. Everything's great because my desire is to be in next position yesterday. Like, I want that promotion. As soon as I got promoted, I'm already chasing the next one. And I have the skill set and ability to do that. Here's the problem with people like that. They're short-lived. They don't stay in your organization, in your team for an extended period of time because they're moving positions so fast. They're trying to get to that highest level position of leadership. Don't forget about them. They can be utilized in the way that's good for them and for you, like leadership development, stuff like that. But this peer development is really good for your rock stars. So your rock stars are your stellar performers as task executors, right? They may have no desire to move up. They may not want to, get leadership positions, but they are your know the job in and out kind of expert. That it really prides himself in the mastery of their skill. We see this a lot in technical jobs in IT, in construction and those kind of things with hands-on. But there's people like that even in service and education and how to deliver things, how to coach, how to do that. And oftentimes we leave these people alone and we think, well, they're here, they're not going anywhere, but you're not utilizing them in the way that helps them and helps you. Because if you put a person like that into peer development, they are going to practice their mastery. One of the best ways to get your rock stars engaged is and put them in a position where they can shine at the skill that they're good at, because they take pride in it. They don't care about advancement. They know that their pay is really not going to be that impacted. So the thing that they have to pride themselves on is their work, is their knowledge and things like that. When you allow them to develop others, you're motivating them. You may pay them. You may not have to, depends on who they are, but make sure you compensate them in the right way if need to be. And at the same time, you're developing the people with the person that's the best at developing the task, instead of taking the superstar that's really good at teaching people, really exciting, really energetic, got good people skills, but they're not as deep of a knowledge in the task. So let the superstar take care of the leadership while your rock stars take care of task development. Hopefully that makes sense. And consistency will create miracles, guys. When you do this proactively, when you start doing this, you may not see in the first few months see massive changes, but I'm telling you, a few months into this or a year into this, you're going to see things happening in your culture, in your organization that you have no explanation for. Just things are working, things are flowing, everything's going. Why? Because you've created so much entrepreneurial spirit that people are taking initiative, solving problems, creating opportunities, improving efficiency, improving optimization without you ever being involved. It's just happening. But if you didn't set it up like that, if you didn't go through all these progressions properly, you're not going to get there. So the last piece here is using these things. We will be able to overcome, if we build it, they will come mentality, because the training was built by them. They built the training. They chose the books because the training that they're doing is something that they're proud of. It's something that they're very skillful with. We're driving that intrinsic motivation. We're really helping people to be motivated intrinsically, because if then rewards don't work. And I will not spend too much time on this because it's a whole hour presentation, but oftentimes when you dangle a carrot in front of a person and try to get them to do something, it will take a bigger carrot to create the same impact down the road. It's just how people work. And eventually you can't increase the carrot, so the performance will drop. But with intrinsic motivation, as you can kind of see on the board, the difference, that will not occur. They will continue to be motivated because the purpose comes from inside, not externally. So as an example, what's the difference, right? Positive, negative motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. We want to be positively, intrinsically motivating our employees to ensure that they want to do the development to overcome the if we build it, they will come mindset. So I just really want to write this report because it appeases my desire for autonomy, mastery, purpose, whichever one it may be. What is kind of better, I mean, than the other two is I write this report because you get a bonus, right? You gave me a bonus and I'm doing it still positive. Worse than that, I really don't want to write this report because they feel bad, that it's nothing intrinsically motivating them. And what's even worse than that is now they're not going to write this report, or you're going to write this report, or you're going to be fired. So now there is fear. Now there is all sorts of stress. That last thing is so common, but that is the most unsustainable thing you can do to human beings. Putting fear into their minds while you thinking you're motivating them, all you're doing is just making them look for another place, disengaging them, and causing all sorts of problems. So that's it. That's all I got. But let me see if there's any questions. You guys can fire off some questions if you got any.